I'll finish this off. Give me a second. Alright, let's see what I got here. So I'm recording this live. It just makes things quicker. So, it's, let's see, Wednesday afternoon here in Las Vegas, about 4 p.m. 15th of June, 2022, Pacific time. Let's see now. Sorry, I'm getting some sort of hideous overlay on my screen. I don't know what happened. Okay, we're good. I'm sure everybody's kind of aware of what's going on right now. I'm going to rattle through a few things just to get some perspective, and I'm going to get into this chart for today. And before we wrap out of here, I've got a kind of a big red alert coming for everybody, just so that you know. Alright, so today we have the moon in Capricorn up here. It's moving towards Pluto. So it's going to, my feeling is it's going to trigger this deep sense of fear about what's happening in the United States of America as the United States goes through its Pluto return. Now, it's very interesting from my perspective, because I'm an amateur astrologer and I like following these things. But the way I see it, this is the first time in human history that we've been able to chart and witness a Pluto return. Okay? We have all heard about the Saturn returns, the Jupiter returns, solar returns, and so on and so on. And they all have very well established, let's say, storylines in regular old Western astrology. And there are some really good astrologers out there who, put out some pretty good ideas about Pluto and Pluto returns in general, but that knowledge and wisdom is expanding dramatically in the last few years, especially because of the United States actually living through its Pluto return, and that's about a 250-year cycle, okay? And for me it's very interesting because I see how the Pluto return for the United States is impacting the whole of the world. And it's not a coincidence. It's simply because the way that the United States was born and built, it was a very unique thing in its time, 4th of July 1776, where the whole concept of rulership and, let's say, ownership and management of populations, empires, was all done from a top-down, let's say, energy approach, where you had despots, monarchs, emperors, military leaders, and they all operated in such a way that they treated their piece of land, their domain, their territory, as their own personal empire. And they could exploit it however they wanted to. And, that's just been going on. It's just, basically human nature, pecking order of things, and survival of the fittest, and those at the very top get the very most, and so on and so on. So it's kind of obvious. But what happened in 1776 in America is that these group of people called the Founding Fathers decided, you know what, this doesn't work for us anymore. We're sick of it from the top-down approach. We want to flip things around so that we, the people, elect our leaders who work for us to do things that are essentially God-given, universal laws as opposed to man-made laws. And it's interesting because the very moment that the United States declared independence, and a few years later when it created the Constitution, that whole phenomenon was already in a process of being destroyed by the more, let's say, traditional powers that be, who saw the United States as a threat to their omnipotence. And in that 250-year cycle where we are today, America has lived through its Pluto journey, where it started here, grew here. If you break it up into like 62-year chapters, 4 6s are 24 roughly. Roughly 65 years, you break it up into quarters, kind of like they do with Saturn returns, Saturn journeys. They break it up into quarters. So Pluto, 65 years, then another 65 years, then another 65 years, then another 65 years. So there are these patterns within patterns, cycles within cycles. And so you had the very early days of the birth of America, and then the growth of America and the stabilization to peak power, which was about 120 years ago. And at that point, America was extremely wealthy and abundant in its own way. Yes, it had issues of extreme poverty, and there was lots of internal warfare and let's say challenges with the banking and financial system. But there was private property, private ownership, and land rights, and people were essentially living in their own domain, which was the whole point of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And now we reach a point of peak, let's say, prosperity about 65 years ago, and that's when it became apparent across the whole of planet Earth, after World War I, after World War II, that this thing that we call the United States was this massively powerful, you call it an empire if you want, but a group of people that call itself a country. And then for the last quarter, it basically became indulgent and decadent, and that began the collapse. And here we are today at the very end, the very collapse, the implosion of the United States as it reaches the end of the Pluto cycle. Pluto energy represents birth, procreation and creation, and then death. Okay, there is a very profound, very simplistic kind of energy. And it's being displayed on the world stage now. We're witnessing live in real time the collapse, the implosion of the United States as we know it, in order for a new cycle to begin. As we come out of the first cycle, we're going to head into a new cycle for the Pluto return for the United States of America. United States of America isn't going to disappear, but the way we know it is being heavily undermined, and it's essentially in its deathbed. It's the equivalent of being in stage 5, stage 4 terminal cancer, metastatic cancer, where this thing that we have called the United States is being infected and diseased and permeated by a very, very deadly, let's say, element. And it's basically the death of the United States as we know it. Now, it's not really dead, but it feels like it is to a lot of people. And we're witnessing it on the global stage with global politics and everything. The thing about the American Pluto return is that when America became the pivotal point for the whole of the world economy, and when the United States became infected by, let's say, people who had very, let's say, personal, greedy agendas in mind, they exploited the innocence and the abundance of the United States population and imposed their own system on top. I'm going to show people about that in a few minutes. I'm going to get to that point in just a moment, so please bear with me. Over the last few months, the last couple of years, I've been doing these little astrodoodles and things, and there's been it's an up and down history. I don't do them every day right now. I wish I could. But like today, for example, we're seeing this very hard conflict between the moon in Capricorn and the Mars and Chiron energy in Aries. And I think the way I look at it, it's a very sort of shaking fear of what happens, like when a wounded animal, if you think of every human person on Earth more or less as a wounded animal now, Chiron and Aries, and they're feeling it to the point where it's painful, and they want to act out, and they want to, let's say, what's the word? Correct the injustices against the defamation and destruction of the sovereign self. They want to regain the energy of sovereign self, the supreme energy of the sovereign self, our God-given rights to be us, okay? As opposed to government-given rights to be a slave or a debt cow, or a debt cow on a slave camp, or a debt slave on a debt farm, whichever way you want to look at it. Essentially the United States and China combined in a very sick, toxic marriage. So the whole world is intertwined economically because of the United States hegemony that was spread all over planet Earth because we could do it. They did it because we could do it. And it was a very sad, tragic agenda because inside of the United States there were very powerful leaders, very loving, caring leaders who spotted the sabotage and did everything they could to try and stop the sabotage from happening within the United States. But the perpetrators are so powerful and so wealthy, they basically had the world and the United States in a chokehold because of the financial hegemony that these supreme beings impose upon the politicians in the country and the rest of the banking system. And the result today is that every economy on Earth is convulsing in harmony, in unison with the convulsions of the United States. If you look at the stock markets, the currency markets across the world, the commodity markets, oil and gas, orange juice, fertilizer, corn, wheat, soy, all of it is convulsing. And it's because every single economy and every single population on earth is now completely entwined. And it's a result of the weaponization of the American dollar to benefit the elites at the very, very top of their system. They don't particularly care or worry about, losing a couple of billion people. In fact, that's what they're hoping for. It sounds kind of sick, but my personal opinion, and don't quote me on this, but I think their goal is to radically shrink the global population. You have to do your own homework on this stuff. You have to read the background stories of what's happening with some of the world's biggest, most powerful foundations with very famous big names at the top. Bill, George, Barack, Michelle, Bush, and others and others. And we've also kind of progressed to today where we have this new thing called the WEF and the WHO, and we have all the, let's say, communications media people who are complicit with the great, let's say, reset. Over here on this aspect, we just came out of the full moon. I wish I could have done a video then. But last night in the United States we had a full moon where the sun was in Sagittarius, the moon was in Sagittarius opposing Sun and Gemini at very tight degrees in a very tight T-square with Neptune in Pisces. And you could see it very obviously in the world news where there's this intense disconnect between truth and facts relative to fraud, lies, betrayal, and deception. It's very similar to the aspects that we were feeling about 9 months ago when the North Node was in Gemini over here and Neptune was back over here, and we were constantly cycling between this concept of truth versus lies. And a lot of people in the world are starting to realize that we have been lied to by the so-called powers that be, especially in the United States. And people are starting to notice it, even in primetime media like the ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBCs, Reuters, Associated Press, United, or whatever it is, Newswires, whatever it is, UPI, something, I forgot. But even they're having to do it. All the liberal media sources like Time Magazine, Life Magazine, all the others, they're all pointing it out. The front page of The Economist magazine, they're pointing it out. You can't hide this stuff anymore. The bad stuff is so bad, you simply can't hide it simply because the mass media doesn't want you to know about it. But it's leaking out and they can't help it. It's leaking like a broken dam. It's just coming out like a deluge of sewage. And it's starting to stink up the whole of planet Earth. You've probably noticed that millions of people across Earth, tens of millions, it's going to end up as probably 2 billion people are going to be, I would say, dealing with famine, starvation, and death over the next few years as the implosion takes full effect across the world. Remember, Pluto is very, very slow moving. So what's happening now is setting up a ripple effect and a set of consequences that are going to be felt for years to come, just as we go over the cusp here and over the cusp here. The cusp over here, 27 degrees Capricorn, Pluto retrograde, that's been going on for years, and it's going to go on for a couple more years because Pluto moves so slowly. But then eventually Pluto is going to move beyond and head into Aquarius here. And we're really going to feel it. It's the energy of revolution across the world is going to be exploding because it's going to become apparent in mass consciousness that there's something so screwed up about humanity. People are going to rise up. People are going to start to demand they want their sovereignty back into their lives. Okay? Can't help it. Just go back 250 years and look in history. Look at the first 100 years before the Pluto return and the next 50, 70 years after the Pluto returned well, not the Pluto return, but the original Pluto date of 1776. Massive global turmoil, massive global wars as humanity tried to restructure itself in the very early stages of trying to escape from the oppression and the tyranny of monarchs and emperors and abusive leaders. Okay? Well, the same story is happening again, but it's instantaneous and it's multinational simultaneously all the time. Here's a very short list of all the obvious goop. I'm sure you know about this already. Today we just had a 0.75 interest rate hike issued by the Federal Reserve. That's huge, okay? That's going to crash more markets and cause more price rises and more financial pain to everybody in America and from there to the rest of the world. Powell blames inflation on Putin and the Ukraine war. I mean, it's ludicrous. It's a direct result of the actions of the U.S. Federal Reserve. The U.S. Federal Reserve is owned by certain people, and this is their agenda. So inflation they're claiming is around 8%. I think it's much higher. They're starting to say 10%, but in America it's actually going higher and higher and higher. It's frightening. We got the immigration issue. There's mass migration happening all over the world. Especially the very poorest and most abused people are starting to surge and migrate like massive tidal waves into places where they are not welcome. They're not welcome because they're seen as, clogging up an already clogged up system. Gas prices, food prices. They're not just accidents, it's all sabotage, it's all engineered, it's all deliberate, okay? I'm going to say it out loud because there's enough other people on mass media saying it as well. So don't, if you want to judge me, go ahead. I don't care. The most sad and tragic sabotage to me is the millions of cattle, pigs, chicken, and seafood that are being destroyed in so-called accidents. In other words, that's another thing, create inflation, shrink the food supply by 20-30%, create starvation, create food panic across the world, create chaos, and then, provide solutions. Yeah. Translate is basically, let's destroy America in order to destroy the Constitution. We are going to cripple the United States population so the population is begging for somebody, save me, save me, save me. And then the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization come along with the United Nations to say, hey, we've got a superb plan. It's globalization. Just vote for us and we will save you. In fact, you don't even have to waste your energy voting for us. We're taking over anyway. We're not voted in, and we don't have to because we have more power than all the governments put together. So just trust us and go along with it. All you have to do is get in line, get your chips implanted, and get your virus passports, and you'll be good to go. And we will tell you what you can do, what you can't do, how you can live, where you can live, what you can eat, what you cannot eat. And by the way, at the same time, it's very sad that 2 billion people are going to die, but that's part of the plan anyway. Okay, January 6th committee, obviously it's such an obvious farce, but it has to happen. You have to understand folks in Washington who are supposedly running this country, they don't have anything better to do. It's just a massive distraction and a smear campaign against, people who are trying to stand up and protect the truth. There's a couple of big folks, Vanguard and BlackRock, you probably heard of them. They have been commanding several of the largest diesel providers in America to deliberately reduce supplies to all their users by 26% as soon as possible. Why? It's because these folks here, these big famous names here, they need more crash, more chaos, more pain, more losses. They're trying to engineer an even bigger crash in the markets and destroy the markets because that's how they do this stuff. They wait for the complete demolition and they go in because they have all the assets, and then they buy all the distressed assets at fire sale prices. It's all part of the plan for them to take more control and ownership. Hello, Sarah, I see you. I'm just going to keep talking. I'm not going to do much on the chats, okay, Sarah? So be afraid, people. Be very, very afraid. I mean, be prepared to protect your money, protect your privacy, and protect yourself, okay? It's extremely important. You might want to start watching some prepper channels or some channels that have very, let's say, healthy, let's say, education on finance as opposed to, gimmick garbage. You've probably also heard stories about the elites that they're building all these massive VIP private mega bunkers in these super ultra wealthy bunker communities, okay? They obviously know what's coming. It's essentially a planned inevitable collapse. So that coincides exactly with the Pluto return of America. And you can see how the collapse of the United States, it's not actually going to die, but it's kind of an implosion as it goes into the chrysalis and reemerges as a butterfly again. It's being initiated by certain people, and other people have to live through it. Keep going here. The folks that seem to be catching all the highlights and the headlights and the spotlights right now is the World Economic Forum. You've probably heard about them. They've been quietly operating for about 25 years, but now they are full on the full stage of the planet Earth. And they just finished their big deal Agenda 2030 meeting in Davos a few weeks ago. And of course, their whole idea is decarbonization of the world, electric cars, cut down travel and shipping, turn everything into insect food and vegetarians for the whole of Earth. And everybody will be happy, and it'll all be pushed forward through carbon taxes. Okay. The next step, of course, is the what's happening inside the United States. You've heard this many times before. The First and Second Amendments are under extreme attack by certain people. And the idea is to destroy our Constitution, which would theoretically translate into the end of America. But therein lies the rebirth. They haven't taken into account the astrology of a Pluto return. So they don't know that. Well, I'm sure lots of these elites at the very, very top use astrology to some extent, but I don't think they ever watch my channel. Now, a couple other things I wanted to mention here. I am watching out very carefully for Mars. I've been tracking it close, and I mostly follow the moon because I seem to be hypersensitive, and I have to be very careful to the moon patterns. I can handle the movements here, but with the moon, it fluctuates with the human emotional body, just like the oceans and the tide. I feel it very strongly, and if I am not aware of the astrological weather, I can become a victim. It's just like, going out surfing and you forget to pay attention to the waves. You think, oh, I'm fine, everything's just fine, I'm having a good time, up and down, surfing up and down, and then suddenly, oh, I should have known. Duh. Anyway, the whole of this astrodoodle here, like all my astrodoodles, is basically my attempt to check out the astrological weather for my own benefit and welfare so that I don't get crushed under these magnetic invisible waves that are generated by the movement of our planets in our solar system. If you think I'm a lunatic, go and talk to some NASA scientists. They know all about this stuff, except they read it differently. They read it for space travel, okay? They're not so interested in astrology themselves. But just lately, normally I focus on the moon personally, but personally I'm now watching Mars very carefully because about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, or even 4 months ago, Mars was over here, early February 2022, and you could tell right there when Mars was conjoining with Saturn, that's when the big war in Europe broke out, the conjunction, okay? Then it progressed all the way through here, and the war is just increasing. As soon as Mars conjoined with Jupiter here, about a month or so ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, I predicted massive explosions in violence across the world, personal one-on-one violence, like one person attacks another. It's also mass violence, but it's a massive explosion, massive indulgence of violence. And of course, you saw that in the United States with all the mass shootings. Okay, so totally predictable. Now, also when I look at Mars, I think of the abuse of Mars, like sex abuse and things like that. So there are huge headlines bursting out across the world right now, not just in America, but all across the world, for all the sex abuse charges, to do with religions and corporations, the Amish, the Baptists, the Catholics. It's been going on for decades, but it's even worse than anybody thought. And these folks here, and plenty others, they think they're immune. They've been getting away with it because they can get away with it. And they have so much power, and they exert their power by using violence and threats of violence to shut down the victims so that the victims don't speak. But there's enough victims who are so sick of it that they're speaking up anyway. They're sick of it. The mass shootings, I just talked about that. Some people are saying, well, is it just spontaneous? Well, it is partly spontaneous, but again, you could say, well, never let a good crisis go to waste. So if you're having spontaneous mass shootings all across America in a matter of weeks, and it happens to coincide with Mars conjoined Jupiter, that's a perfect segue to reignite the gun control controversy laws in Washington. That's a great opportunity to try and shut down the Second Amendment. We need to take away guns from Americans. All these guns are killing people. No, it's criminals who are killing people, and they happen to be using guns. All the criminals are being released by the judges, who are all bought out by George Soros. And so on. Also, another interesting thing, this fellow Elon, he's becoming extremely bold and almost reckless and, let's say, disruptive in his tweets now. And it doesn't surprise me at all. Guess what? Elon Musk has Mars in Aquarius conjoined his north node in Aquarius. Okay? That's Elon Musk. It's about, I think, 20 degrees Mars in Aquarius in his 8th house of other people's money. The Scorpio energy, the Pluto energy, extreme disruption, upheaval, revolutionary energy. And that is his destiny. His destiny is to tip up tables, turn tables over, and shake up the world. It's almost like the Page of Swords energy. It's almost like whistleblower energy gone berserk, using highly advanced mental capabilities with the Aquarian themes about the advancement of humanity, the future of humanity. And that's his mission. He is absolutely on path right now. And I personally believe the voice of Elon Musk and the actions of Elon Musk are going to become even more disruptive and unpredictable and shocking. And it's going to affect the world economy and American politics. Okay? Saturn is in Aquarius right now, almost conjoined his natal Mars in Aquarius, his north node. So believe me, everything is exactly happening as it should be. And why is that so? Because it can't happen any other way. So watch out, people. Watch out, America. Now I want to do one more thing here before we go. Watch out for Mars. I talked about that, but I'm going to pinpoint something for you specifically. I feel I have to do this because I'm doing it for myself because I'm very concerned about this. I'm looking at the point where Mars, I've been talking about how when Mars conjoins certain things. When we had Mars back here in Capricorn, it conjoined with Pluto, conjoined with Saturn, conjoined with Neptune, conjoined with Jupiter. The next big thing is going to be conjoined with Uranus. when Mars conjoins with Uranus, there's going to be extreme global volatility, okay, in the financial markets, the global finances, okay? If you think the stock markets and commodities and supply chains and the dollars and the yuans and the yens and the francs and the pounds are chaotic right now, interest rates are going up, and markets are imploding, cryptocurrencies are going berserk, just wait until Mars conjoins Uranus, okay? I'm serious. You need to be prepared. I hesitate to use the word WAR, but I don't see any other word that I can use. It's just an expansion of the Mars energy. There's going to be other aspects at the time, but I'm looking specifically here when Mars conjoins Uranus in Taurus. It's going to be very harsh with Saturn here. Global economics. And one thing that triggers disruptions in world economies is very, very bad economics when you have global market implosions, okay? I'm just letting you know. And if you want to put a date on your calendar, to be specific, let's mark 1st of August. In fact, I'm just going to mark it here. I'm sending a big alert. We're at 1st of August 2022. I'm putting out the alert now. Please, everybody, prepare for yourselves. Protect your money. Protect your privacy. Online privacy, your bank data, all of that. Your communications networks. Protect yourself, your physical body, your health. You might want to get prepared for extreme self-defense. Put it all together. It's just like my book. Protect your money, protect your privacy, protect yourself. Remember that money is a belief system. Okay? We have a belief system now that is unraveling because the whole of planet Earth is starting to realize it's a fraud. It's the biggest fraud in human history, and it's coming unraveled. At the same time that fraud is coming unraveled, these folks here are feeling like they are very, very close to their end game where they can win, where they can actually take over the planet Earth and create a one world order, a new world order. Globalized tyranny, globalized communism, under the control of the WEF, the Fed, and the WHO, okay? I'll have to check that out, Love Triber. That's another video. So in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up for now, and I'm going to put this over here. Pray for planet Earth. What I've been trying to do now is I'm trying to watch things that make me feel better and keep the heart energy flowing, because in such extreme times, as extreme and disruptive as things are for right now, it's actually very, very good for certain people, particularly certain elites at the very, 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 very tippy top of the pyramid of power. So I'm going to use this moment right now, pyramid of power, as a segue where I can show you something that I think is the best illustrated representation of this so-called pyramid of power that we've been talking about for a long time. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go through it all here because it's a lot of material, and I hope that you take the time to go through it. I'm actually going to write the link here. Actually, I've already written it here, but I'm going to write it in bigger letters. I'd like to invite you to go to I'd like to invite you to go to a place called truthcontrol.com and scroll through the materials and look down the right-hand side, and you will find one little article video that is titled New World Order Guide. Now, this guide is about 5 years old, okay? So it has very little about anything happening. Well, there's nothing in it happening after 5 years ago. And it is at the point about 5 years ago when the WEF in particular started to attract global attention. Even though the WEF has been around for many years, it started to reach global attention when the public started to understand and realize these folks are the culmination, the ultimate culmination of the New World Order. They just keep packaging it and repackaging it as a new thing. One world government, New World Order, globalism, whatever you want to call it. Back then it was called the New World Order, but now they're calling the World Economic Forum, and the actual, let's say, the arm of enforcement for the WEF is going to be the WHO. You can research that stuff yourself. But let me show you this link here. I'm going to see if I can do this transition smoothly for you. So give me a second. Where is it? Over here. Yeah, okay. All right, so what I'm going to do now is see if I can do this by sharing my screen. I don't know if this is going to work. How can I do this? Let me check. I don't think it's going to show up properly. Let me just check something. No, it's not going to show up. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a separate little video immediately after this, and I'm going to follow up and show you. Okay? I can't fix it right now. By the way, everybody, hello, greetings. This is Terra Lumination. Wednesday evening in sunny Las Vegas, Nevada, United States of America, roughly over here. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up now. I'm going to create another new video immediately. It'll be different. It's not going to be live, and I'm just going to load up the thing that I want to show you right now, okay? Take care, everybody. Number one, love thyself, okay? Think about little Chiron and Aries. All that pain needs to be acknowledged and understood, okay? Love thyself, okay? I'm going to stop this, where is it? I got to press the end button. Okay, cheerio, everybody. Bye-bye.